Hello, and welcome to Live Pop Culture on Deprogram with Keri Smith. Today is Wednesday, January 18th, in the year 2023.
In the year 2023.
Is that a Conan reference?
Yeah. Thousand.
I remember that sketch.
Yeah.
Um, Welcome. Hello, Sonora. Look at all you beautiful people. Um, I'm very excited to be here tonight. We had a whirlwind day. My husband and I, as many of you know, we're renovating this house that we're living in as we live in it, which is sometimes chaotic. And today we did a whirlwind trip to get a stove, a naughty gas range, and a salt gas range. And long story short, we did not come home with the range. It was a 6-hour round trip, but we may come home with it later this week. It just
Oh,
depends.
you didn't get it? I thought you did bring it
After
home.
all of that, I know, I thought I would be coming home with it, but we got there and there were some problems with the different apps and the payment, but then also it requires a little more work than I thought. And so I definitely want this style. I'm not sure if I want this exact one, but we're going to decide tomorrow or the next day. Anyway, it was,
Oh.
and so we rushed all the way there and then we came all the way back. I'm like, okay, modern art. We got to go talk about modern art. So I made it. I made it, people. It's good to see you. It's good to see your avatar.
Yes. Good to see you.
If it's your first time here, this is a live show that Mystery Chris and I do on Wednesday nights where we just talk about pop culture. We have different topics and hang out with people and try to have a bit of fun. Everyone's very happy that we are not covering bronies again this week. Last week was a doozy. uh, this week we're doing modern art. It's something that people throw, like a lot of words and phrases. I think we all sometimes throw these phrases around and not really knowing sometimes what we're talking about, or maybe we do, but we don't know exactly if another person using that phrase means the same thing that we do. And so modern art gets used a lot to describe things that are maybe more accurately would fall into the postmodern art category. And then the thing that I learned in preparing for this, I don't know about you, Chris, but I learned I actually like a lot of modern artists, some of them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's great modern artists, and there's even some decent postmodern artists. But unfortunately, a lot of the postmodern artists is literal garbage, and that gives a bad name to modern art in general. And I'm someone who loves traditional art as well. And I actually rank traditional art ahead of modern art, but I still love both and I still consider them both to be art, because some people, that cutoff is right after traditional art ended in the late 19th century.
Yeah. So, first of all, the timeline, modern art, the way that it's generally accepted, the term, the definition, it spans about 100 years. So modern art is the period. If you're taking, I did not, but for someone who's taking art history, or you will learn that modern art was a period that started in the around the 1860s and lasted until the 1960s, 1970s, which is a pretty big period. There's a lot of people that they throw into this category, and then they end up breaking it down into all these different periods within what they call modern art period.
But it is interesting when you look at it, you kind of see this move to abstract forms, to the point of just pure abstraction once you get to the abstract expressionist. And
Mhm.
you also see a desire for the artist to show their own expression,
Mhm.
self-expression, when it comes more about the artist, more about the intent, which is what so much of modern art is, judging the art by the intent of the artist, especially if that artist checks a certain box in terms of identity, which that's a major thing going on in the art world right now. There's a movement to canonize, the Western canon of white guys, de-whiteify it, basically, the art canon. So they'll find obscure artists that are women or black or whatever, and try to make a case that they should be included in the art canon, which is basically, if you open any old school art text, all the big artists that they talk about in history and Western art history is basically what's considered to be canon. It's a group of, basically formed by art critics, artists, art historians. There's a consensus around certain artists that are believed to have been very influential into the development and evolution of Western art. And most of them are white men. And there's clearly a hatred for that these days. And so they're tempting certain people, attempting to try to force people who don't belong in the canon in there, or they're trying to take, say, foreign art, because a lot of modernist painters, people like Matisse and Picasso, were inspired by art from other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Picasso was inspired by African art. Matisse was inspired by primitive art. I believe it's Tahiti. He spent some time on. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of people are saying, well, if they were inspired by that, then that should be included in the Western canon. And that's just kind of a roundabout way to de-whitifying it by including these foreign, artists and foreign artworks.
Is Matisse the one that left his wife and family and went to Tahiti or wherever it was just
Got
to
a
paint?
STD? Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was still when he said it was like, which one was oh yeah. Well, so someone in the chat just mentioned there's a reason why modern art is in the news lately, also as a topic of conversation. Freethinker 301 says after the Boston MLK bronze statue fiasco, yeah, modern art's reputation's in the gutter right now. Yeah, I agree. We're going to pull that up. We have it queued up. But here's the thing. Technically, that wouldn't be considered modern art because they say the period of modern art ended in the 1960s or 70s. This statue would fall in the period that I guess later on in history they're going to call this the postmodern art era.
Yeah.
However, you will notice as you go through that period of like 100 years of what they call modern art that there were some in that area like Duchamp, Marcel Duchamp, is that how you say his name? Duchamp,
Mm-hmm.
who they say he was like an avant-garde, like he was an early precursor to postmodern art who happened to fall. He was like ahead of his time in the modern art area. And he was part of the Dada art movement. But what we're seeing today, I think the way I'm starting to conceptualize it or think about it after listening to a lot of videos about modern art, reading a lot about it the past couple of days is some of the early modern artists who I like the Impressionists, like Monet. They were basically saying what they were doing at the time was new and different because they were skilled in the rules. They knew they could execute things in the old style well, but they started because they knew those boundaries. They started breaking them in these very creative ways, and to give you an impression of something with the paint rather than painting it to look like a photograph. And also, this period started right after the invention of the camera. And so suddenly you have families who are, instead of needing to have a portrait, a painting that depicts everything very realistically, they're able to get their photograph taken. And so some people say that's what in part led to the Impressionist period, which is like around the beginning of what they call modern art, because now people, they don't, artists are free to like break the boundaries more. They're not having to depict things exactly as you see them. And so in the modern art period, we're going to go through some of the modern artists, but there's people in there like Salvador Dali. They put him in like the surrealism part of modern art. And, Picasso and Cubism and people that I think are really talented. And then you get towards the end of that 100 years, the ones like Duchamp, which I think kind of what I'm hearing people say is that because they started breaking those boundaries, what happened then is over time, you have people who don't have the same level of skill or talent as the ones at the beginning of that period. And then they're not even, it's not like they're learning the rules and then breaking them. They're not even learning the rules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of the artists didn't know the basic techniques and perspective and a lot of things like Picasso. If you ever look at any of his work before he became a cubist, he was actually a bit of a traditional painter.
Yes.
And I actually like a lot of his art. And so A lot of them were actually inspired by photography. Certainly, photography did cause some people to look at things different and kind of go a more abstract-y way, but it did inspire a lot of modern artists to, you know, do what they did instead of as a projection of photorealism. They caused them to really start painting things that simulated movement, the way that a long exposure in a camera could capture the movement of a person or a thing or something moving. And so we did see, as modernism came about, I think a kind of rejection of traditionals, because it's similar to architecture. We did our whole architecture show, and similarly, modernist architects rejected tradition in favor of building something new, which they felt could bring about some kind of utopian society. And so, certainly, you saw that in regular art, paintings, this rejection of tradition, rejection of, you know, even religion, because you have to remember this is around the time when Industrial Revolution and science was really getting big and really transforming people's perspectives on life, on religion, on God, and was causing a lot of people to just look at things differently, and that's being reflected in the art. And certainly, once you had World War I, a very empty, nihilistic war where it's just about nothing, basically, that was reflected in the art too. And so, the Dadaists, which I think was right before World War I, were nihilists. And I have a uh, article I sent you about the Dadaists, but I really think that they were kind of the start of a lot of the
Postmodern.
modern art we see now. This,
Yes.
this,
All the
this,
crap.
yes, this just arguing against artistic standards. Period. It wasn't just a rejection of the bougie art elitists. It was just rejection of artistic standards. Period. They just hated art.
Can I tell you, maybe I can find this one video I watched and I can pull up this one clip later. I saw in all the stuff I was watching and listening to, there was one video where these experts are on screen, these art experts, and they're talking about modern art, and they're trying to explain, and they're talking about this one painter who is famous, I guess, for this painting called something called the Black Square, which looks just like it sounds. It's just a black square. And it made me think of when everybody put the black square on their profiles, like for the social
Oh
justice
yeah,
people. Yeah. Um,
everyone's an artist.
Everyone's an artist now, but they're seriously sitting there and saying, you know, when you see the black square, a lot of common people are tempted to say, I could do that. But what you don't realize is the black square is a culmination of 20 years of this artist's expertise. And it's going on about like how you just don't get the black square. Like this is you couldn't just do it. It's 20 years of this artist's history and you know, experimentation and all leading to this. I'm like, what? No,
But
it's
that's
just
what
black
pushes
square.
people away. It's like the elitism, where a lot of art, modern art, is basically, again, judging art by the stated intent of the artist. And to me, art being a visual communication medium, I think the best art explores aspects of the human condition that can't be fully explored solely through text. I mean, that's the point of communicating
Yes, like
visually.
music, like music.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of modern art, in order to decipher it, you need a whole wall of text of the artist telling you what the intent or what it represents in order to understand this. And it becomes like an inside language that I think a lot of more elitist people like to have, because it allows them to look down on people that don't get, quote unquote, get this art and feel superior, feel
Yeah.
like they're, you know, high and mighty, they're elitists, basically, just look down on the plebs who are just dumb. And so that's one of the things that turns a lot of people off on modern art these days.
Mhm. Absolutely. But then I think some people, they they allow it's like, the emperor has no clothes because everyone else is pretending the emperor has clothes. There are a lot of people
Yeah.
who allow that to keep them silent, who go to a museum and see a black square on the wall, or there's another guy who just did a big white painting. It's a white wall.
Mhm.
Okay, and they look at that and they go, "I guess I'm just not smart enough to get it. Everyone else thinks this is great. Let me take a picture of this white wall." You know? It's like, no, it's Garbage.
Literal garbage. And it's so easy to rationalize anything. You could do anything, put it in the context of a gallery, which will automatically makes it have more value because, oh, if it's in a gallery, it
Ooh.
must be something special, must be saying something really deep when it's just a piece of garbage. But you can impugn meaning onto it, anything basically. You can just take a literal, like I could take a piece of trash, put it in a gallery and say, oh, this piece of crumpled up newspaper represents how news goes into one ear and then it's out the other. It's
Yeah.
disposable.
It's
Information's disposable. We
disposable.
live in the information age where information is learned and then forgotten. And then people, oh, that's so deep. I'm like, no, I just came up with that just looking at trash.
Yeah,
It's
you
just, it's
could.
so easy. You could do about anything.
So this one video I watched, it may have been a PragerU video. It was an art teacher, and he was saying that he will, when he gets graduate art students, he will sometimes give them at the beginning of the class, like the beginning of the season or what have you. I forget the word. That's how long I've been out of school. The semester. He will he will show them a picture of paint splatter, and he'll be like, this is a Jackson Pollock. I want you to write an essay on the symbolism here and what he's trying to say with this piece. And then after they spend a lot of words, a lot of text, like you said, describing this piece, he'll pull out to show them that it was just like an extreme close up of his painting smock, like his apron that he gets paint all over when he
Yeah, I think
paints.
I've seen that video. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that's a pretty great illustration for students of, like, you can kind of come up with a lot of text for anything.
Mhm. But it's
Um,
this abandonment of universality and the universal human experience that I think we've just seen decline in really all art forms, where it's become more subjective, more about the artist or about a person just coming up with their own meaning rather than it having something that's more broad and understood by, a larger
Universal.
group of people. Yes.
Speaking of, hello, Nick Weiser. 32 flavors of Nick Weiser's here. He says comic book, I think he's talking about comic book art, has gotten very depressing. I wonder why that is. It's probably because they're promoting people based on identity rather than talent.
I remember for comic book art tended to mimic a lot of anime and manga because it seemed like a lot of artists were, into that. And so they're trying to recapture that, but in, Americanized, comic book. And I just remember the quality just seemed to go down at that time, about 20 years ago or so. And that's around the time when I just kind of stepped away a little bit from comics because quality wise, it was
I
just,
know a lot of people stepped away because of the quality and some of those same things. This is interesting. This is my husband, Anthony Garcia Music's here tonight. He says Joseph Bays did Bays, Beuys, did an exhibit sometime in the 90s of a bathtub full of lard. The cleaning lady cleaned out the bathtub not knowing any better. I believe that Bays ended up suing her. What? I love the cleaning
wow.
ladies like, okay, let's clean this up. Okay, here's the news story that someone mentioned. So this is a bit of art news that's topical. Our pop culture episodes are not, we don't usually, we're not always topical, but we were like, okay, we could talk about this one thing that's in the news. I don't know if you guys saw this. There's a new MLK statue that was unveiled in Boston. This is a CNN article that we have pulled up. A new monument dedicated to MLK and Coretta Scott King sparks debate. And you can see here, it's really weird. I've looked at a few pictures and I still don't quite understand it yet. It's like,
You just don't get it, Keri.
it's just like these very large hands, and you can't really tell what other body parts are there. It's just weird. um,
They didn't put did they put a picture of the angle where it looks like a
a,
penis?
a penis, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just read a little bit of this. Backlash ensued soon after a monument meant to honor Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his wife Coretta Scott King's legacy in Boston was unveiled. The 20-foot tall, 40-foot wide The Embrace, that's the name of it, statue, was unveiled Friday in the Boston Common, where King gave a speech on April 23rd, 1965, to a crowd of 22,000. The statue was inspired by a photograph of King and Scott King, which captured them hugging after he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. The art piece, designed by Brooklyn-based conceptual artist Hank Willis Thomas, only features the couple's arms during the embrace and not their heads, which has sparked.
Isn't that so dehumanizing? I
Yes.
it's like, come on.
I just want to see somebody do a comedy video of like the pitch meeting where it's like, okay, it's their arms, right? And you got one arm over here, and everybody's like, and people are like questioning it, but is this artist black? But they're like, he's black. Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
he is black. Yeah.
I just looked him up. Okay, yeah. And then everybody's like, don't question him, but he knows what he's doing. Okay, it only features the couple's arms during the brace and not their heads, which has sparked criticism and mockery online. While some people defended the sculpture, others described it as hideous or disrespectful, with social media users posting memes saying it resembled a sex act. That's the thing, is every angle, it's kind of like, am I looking at this at the right angle? I don't quite get it.
Orgy statue.
Is this the front or the back? Seneca Scott, a community organizer in Oakland, California, and a cousin of Coretta Scott King, told CNN that the statue was insulting to his family. I agree. He previously described it as a, quote, masturbatory metal homage in an essay published by Compact magazine. Quote, if you can look at it from all angles and it's probably two people hugging each other, it's four hands. It's not the missing heads that's the atrocity that other people clamp onto that. It's a stump that looks like a penis. That's a joke. Scott told this is Coretta Scott King's cousin telling CNN, look at this. What is this? Or it's like a lady holding a very large sausage, or like a seal, or I don't know what that is.
Jabba the Hutt's tail.
Okay. But Martin Luther King III said on Monday he was grateful to be able to see a statue representing his parents' love story and their partnership, even if it's just their hands. Sorry. While some people have negative opinions about the monument, he told CNN's Dawn Lemon on Monday that he liked it. I think it's a huge representation of bringing people together, King said. I think the artist did a great job. I'm satisfied. Yeah, it didn't have my mom and dad's images, but it represents something that brings people together. And in this day and age, when there's so much division, we need symbols that talk about bringing us together. I think it brought people together to say this is horrendous.
Yes. I don't understand. Like, separate from the context of being Martin Luther King statue. Like, if someone didn't say that's what it was supposed to be, would anybody even know? Like, there's no way to tell like what it's supposed to be. They're just hands. It's so nondescript that it just defeats the purpose of you honoring, Martin Luther King or anybody. If it's supposed to be about anybody, if it's just hands. I mean, this is one of the things that frustrates me about, a lot of modern art, where a lot of these artists are more concerned about themselves and their representation, their brand, and less concerned about the art that they produced, and less concerned about the art elevating what the subject matter is. Because if they did a regular statue, just Martin Luther King hugging his wife, you'd be like, okay, that's okay. Maybe if you stylize it, it can kind of elevate it a little bit. But to this point where it's removing, any reference to Martin Luther King or his wife, to the point you can't barely tell what it is like I said in an article, it's really disrespectful. It's just amazing that this was able to get this far. Because, I mean, I'm sure it's not like he was able to do this without anybody knowing. It had to go through all sorts of, checks by, whoever is in charge of, managing this project. And it just got approval all the way. And now
all the way up.
The public is reacting negatively towards it. It's amazing. And I'm just wondering, are they just going to hope that this blows over and leave the statue, or are they going to take it down and put it on one that's more honoring of MLK up?
They're probably gonna leave it up. They're
Yeah.
gonna do The Emperor Has No Clothes. They're just gonna pretend like it's good. It's awful. I'd like to see something that actually had a head and, like, a body and, required look, let's look at, I just wanna see what else this guy has done, the guy who did this. Did you
They're all arms and like body parts.
Are you
It's like,
serious?
yeah, it's like a serial killer. First serial killer artist. That'd be
Okay, so
funny.
here's some of his other works. He's got a lot of, mixed media, and so he's taking basketball jerseys and doing kind of like silhouettes. I mean, it's okay, but it's not I don't really think it
Looks more
requires
like
that much.
graphic design
Yeah,
than
like graphic design. I don't think it requires that much skill, honestly. Okay, then we have some of these. What is this? It's just colored. It's just ooh, there's an eye there. Ooh.
It's got an eye
Ugh.
for color. If it shows some of those
Um,
sculptures, it's where there's like one I saw with like a silver arm. There's some other ones I don't know. That look like there are some arms. You go down, little down. There we go. Or to the right. Yeah,
okay, so it's 2 arms, one with a police baton. Okay, so he's making a statement.
looks like T1000.
It does.
That's how
It
I read
does.
it. I'm like, oh, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger stopping T1000.
Oh, you're right. This is like a man, and there's these disembodied arms holding his legs, and what you see these disembodied arms that are holding him?
What does this say to you, Karen?
Crap.
Excellent. Okay.
Sorry. Here we go. Um, this is one of his works. This is life imitates life. It's just black text on a white canvas. It's kind of fading out. You can buy stuff like this at the Hobby Lobby for $10. I mean, anything. I'm serious.
That's true.
There's a ton of this Hobby Lobby stuff in Goodwill.
I want to see like
Um,
a picture of like the cat, the little kitten hanging from a tree branch.
right? What are these? It's just colors. Ah,
You don't get it. It
it's
represents
not. And look,
colors of humanity.
this looks like a photograph of someone with a Nike tattoo.
Good. I guess. He's advertising for him. There we go.
I just don't. And then look at this.
It's like he screwed up painting something. Just got
Yeah.
angry. It's like, I hate this. And I'm like, oh, I could use this.
Hank Willis Thomas, that's his name. So they looked at this page of his works and they were like, this guy, get this guy to do the MLK statue. Let's get a couple of those arms in there, the disembodied arms.
Like,
Okay.
I don't know. Is he black? Yes. Okay, we're going with
Is he black? Good. Do it.
done. Done and done.
Okay, so that's in the news. So people are talking about art again, and you told me, were you reading a book about modern art recently, and that's why you were
Yes.
bringing this up to me? Which book are
Yeah.
you reading?
Culture War by Alexander Adams. He's awesome. It's a book about art and the infiltration of identity politics into art. Kind of what I was saying earlier about the um, attempted destruction of the Western canon, but he talks about reparations regarding art, how a lot of Western artists or Western museums have art that belongs to or that originated to from other parts of the world, and how there's a big movement to say that that's stealing from these people and cultural appropriation. But he goes into all that. He talks even a little bit about games, talks a little bit about Gamergate, talks a little bit about comic books and
Oh,
entryism, and how a lot of comic book companies in the past 20 years have been hiring people based on race and religion, or not religion, race and sex and things like that, and how that's
sexuality.
ruined comics. But yeah, it's a good book, and he's done some interviews, and I listened to a couple of interviews in it, and he even mentioned the knitting war. So I'm like, hey,
Oh,
yeah,
cool. Culture War by Alexander Adams.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Um, Super chat from Broken Umbrella. Thank you. Says inspired by recent events, I'm proposing a beautiful, inspiring statue to be installed in San Francisco, a bronze pair of disembodied butt cheeks.
It's like Idiocracy in the movie Ass.
We are approaching
I know.
Idiocracy. If somebody were doing a documentary about this time period that we're living through, or if like aliens or if they're watching, like, so
Let's not make first contact.
that's not right. They started tearing down statues and replacing them with statues of disembodied arms and body parts. Like from afar, I'm sure it looks very weird. It's like, taking down these statues of like a full human body, replacing it with arms.
That's us.
Okay, so I'm going to bring up one of the articles that I found, just a couple of very basic, what is modern art kind of articles. Which one should I start with? Let's see. No, let me do the other one. Hold on. This other one is I like listicles. I think I've gotten used to them. And this one is 13 modern artists you should know. And they kind of teach you a little about modern art while they're giving you examples. And you probably do know most of these. This is why I'm saying, go ahead.
No, that's saying, yeah, I saw a little bit of this when you sent it. And yeah, there are a lot of famous artists from modernist painters.
And you probably, if you're like me, and you don't know that much about this topic going into it, if you read some of these pieces, you might come away saying, hey, I actually like some modern artists. So 13 modern artists you should know. Is modern art the same as contemporary art? Okay, so you should know they call modern art like the period between, again, like 1860 and the 1960s or the 1970s, depending on what you're reading. And then after that, pretty much everything after that, they've called it contemporary art or postmodern art. Postmodern art being a type of contemporary art. So technically, I think those disembodied arms would be called contemporary art. But let's read some of this. Is modern art the same as contemporary art? Modern art is defined as artworks created sometime between the 1860s and the late 1960s. It's called modern because it challenged the traditions and techniques that came before it. It ran through a whole slew of isms, including Impressionism, Cubism, Surrealism, and Abstract Expressionism. Abstract Expressionism, by the way, is the first one out of all of these that really America claimed, like the United States claimed that as that was their contribution. And it's my least favorite. It includes like Jackson Pollock, and I just think it's the worst. Yeah, out of all of these. Okay, Van Gogh's Sunflowers, Picasso's, I'm not going to try to say it, and Warhol's Campbell's Soup Cans are all examples of well-known modern artworks. Contemporary art is frequently classified as having started after modern art sometime between 1960 and 1970. It is defined as the art of our lifetime or the art of now, and is created by artists who are still living. Contemporary art shifts the focus away from aesthetic beauty to the underlying concept of the work. With movements such as minimalism, conceptual art, postmodernism, feminism, and performance art, it is often an experiment in pushing boundaries and asking questions about what art is and can be. This is the stuff that we are getting today, and it sucks.
Okay. Yes, because the definition of art has been expanded so much that anything is now considered art, which means nothing's art.
Which means nothing's art, yeah. Okay, so let's go through some history of modern art. We'll do this quickly, and feel free, Mr. Chris, to jump in at any point with any of the links you sent me that you think are appropriate. So Claude Monet, 1840, 1926, the icon of Impressionism. I think everyone's familiar with Monet, even if you don't know a lot about art. And I think appreciation of beauty and art and music and stuff is sometimes just very visceral, like gut or emotional reaction. And I was talking about some of this with my husband, and I said, we were talking about, I was like, I don't really care for Picasso. He's like, how can you say that? I'm like, oh, I mean, I respect his
Well,
talent. I know he's very talented. I completely respect it. It's just not my cup of tea. But I really like Monet, and I know that that probably seems boring to some people, but it's because of what it makes me feel. It's that universality that you talked about. It's still somewhat universal. It's I love the colors. It's very serene. I loved the way you get an impression of the scene without it being like a photograph, like photorealism, and it just makes me feel good. So,
yes, make you feel something. Oh.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think like a lot of artists, we're told from a young age to look up with, reverence. And at least as I've gotten older, I've, start looking at some of these artists differently and not valuing some of the work they did as much as I used to, simply because I was being told that how great and important they were.
Mhm. Yeah, same. I think it's a sign of, really getting to a place where you don't care maybe as much about what other people think of you or being right or anything to just
Hmm.
and maybe that comes with age when you're old enough just to be like, "I don't care for XYZ," like Bob Dylan.
Yeah, because a lot of, again, but I think it's a lot of people don't want to be looked down upon as, a pleb, basically.
Yeah,
Because again, there's a lot of value in it. And even if you're not talking about the postmodern stuff, just even modernist or even traditional for that matter, some people that, traditional art doesn't do anything for them. But I think a lot of them, some people are just afraid to come out and just say, oh, this particular art I think is not good, even though everyone else seems to love it because people are going to think that they're dumb, unsophisticated.
right. Okay, let's scroll on. So, well, a little bit about impressionism because I like this article because it tells you a little about each one with the examples. So it says Claude Monet was a French painter dubbed the father of impressionism, an art movement considered the first avant-garde movement of the modernist period. Best known for his nature and landscape paintings in his later years, he spent most of his time painting his flower garden at his home in Giverny, is that how you say that, with its Japanese footbridge and a pond full of lilies. Um, so the other thing about the Impressionists is that I was reading is that they were very interested in light and the way the light hit different things, and they would often do I don't know if you remember his, haystack paintings. They would do paintings of, like, this is what this nature scene looks like at this time of day, and this time of day, and this time of day. It would, like, change. Um, but they still had these ties, I think, to the more traditional art, and they were definitely very skilled.
Yeah, they moved on to depicting environments and more everyday situations, or environments even with humans in it. Because previous to that, a lot of traditional art dealt with religious Christian imagery and Greek mythology and things like that. And so there's kind of shift to more ordinary things
Mhm.
with modernism.
You're right, more ordinary things, like, "Look, this is the basket of apples." So Paul Cézanne, they said, acclaimed as the father of post-impressionism, also celebrated as the forefather of Fauvism and a precursor to Cubism. Again, within modern art, there's all these isms where they break it down and they're like, and then there was Impressionism and then Post-Impressionism. Okay, his contributions to the development of these groundbreaking art styles make him one of the key figures in the history of modern art. Suffice it to say, both Matisse and Picasso referred to him as the father of us all. Van Gogh. Here we go. Vincent van Gogh, 1853 to 1890, the misunderstood genius. This is a starry night. I also really liked Van Gogh.
Mhm. Did you, by the way, did you see there's a Van Gogh art tour going on where it's basically like 3D projections, and it's going on in like every major city. I thought about going, but tickets are a little pricey. And someone I talked to went, they think it was worth the price. But it looks interesting from afar. I just don't want to pay a lot of money to see it.
No, I hadn't heard of that. It's
Yeah,
what it's
maybe you
3D.
can pull it up after this. But
Okay.
yeah, they're projecting his paintings on walls, and so you go into a room, and it's like you're surrounded by, you know, like say this painting, the Starry Night, on all the walls and the ceiling. So it's almost like you're walking into the painting, kind of.
Wow, that sounds really cool though.
Hmm.
But maybe if your friend said it wasn't worth the ticket price. That's not very good. Okay. Well, I had not heard of that. We'll pull that up for anyone who's interested. Vincent van Gogh. We got a picture of Starry Night here. Van Gogh is a creative icon and one of the most famous modern artists of the 19th century. Unappreciated in his time, he only sold one painting in his lifetime, The Red Vineyard, which went for 400 francs in Belgium 7 months before his death. That would have been about $1,500, I think is what I read. Something like that. In contrast, his most expensive painting sold posthumously was Portrait of Dr. Gachet, which took $148.6 million in 1990. He was the crazy one. Even if you don't know a lot about art, you'll remember him. He was the one who cut off his ear and then did some self-portraits
Yeah,
of
send it
himself.
to a prostitute. He was in love with a prostitute. Yep. And he's believed that he killed himself, but I years ago, back when I watched 60 Minutes, I don't anymore, but they did a story where some historians think that some kids were playing around with a gun and shot him, and he covered up for the kids and ended up dying from the gunshot wound that people thought he was self-inflicted. I thought that was interesting. I don't know how much truth's in that, but interesting take.
That I had never heard that, but he did shoot himself in the chest, which is a weird place to
Hmm.
shoot yourself.
Yeah, and some people think that part of his, mental illness was based on the type of paint. Was it lead paint? He was using something in there that was toxic, and some people were speculating that that's what contributed to his madness.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Okay, well, what do you think of Van Gogh? Are you a fan?
Yeah, I like Van Gogh. I love the Impressionists and Post-Impressionists. I love the movement. There's a certain energy that the paintings tend to have.
You're right. It evokes movement, the feeling of look at the winds there. Henry Matisse. Okay, 1869 to 1954, The Great Colors.
Never liked Matisse.
Yeah, I could take it or leave it.
Don't really like much expressionism. It's just
Yeah.
the colors, the off-putting colors. Like most of the expressionists seem a little crazy to me because they're reflecting, like they're saying that the subject they're expressing, what the subject matter is giving off or what they're feeling, whatever. And a lot of it was very stark depictions that made you feel uneasy. It's like maybe this says more about you than what is actually being said about the subject matter.
Right. They said that it was all about emotion and that he was also this. I guess it overlapped with a type of expressionism was called Fauvist,
Hmm.
which is where they would use which meant wild, and they would use these arbitrary colors. They would like paint things in unusual colors, like you can see a lot of green here used in her face, um, and it was all about evoking emotion. But I don't know. I don't feel like what I feel like. Like I said, I look at Monet and I just feel kind of calm. And this one, I just don't. It doesn't speak to me. This is the common man's art review. Welcome to pop culture with the common man. Widely regarded as the art world's first pure colorist, Matisse was a key figure in the Fauvist movement of the early 20th century. His stylistic innovations fundamentally changed the course of modern art and inspired several generations of younger painters. He formed an uneasy friendship with Picasso and was the only painter the Spaniard considered a rival and a master of line. Okay. This is the Scream. Everyone knows the Scream painting.
It was in a car commercial.
It's been in everything.
Yes.
I don't know very much about this painter at all. Edvard Munch, do you?
Hmm.
I probably know the least about him out of everyone on this list.
Yeah.
1863 to
People thought
1954.
he was crazy, which he was very upset about. People were like, this guy is mad. He belongs in an insane asylum. But this painting is expressing a lot of existential dread. And again, just the more pessimistic and cynical, cynicism, I think, started to see creep in through modernism.
Mhm.
Like I was saying earlier, especially after the wake of World War One and the way people kind of view life and society became a little bit more darker.
Yeah, this is definitely very dark. Our Norwegian painter who bridged the major movements of the 19th century, symbolism and 20th century expressionism. Born amid poverty and disease, he was a sickly child who later in life suffered from alcoholism and bouts of mental illness. His 1893 Scream has become one of the most iconic images of art, with the agonized figure seen at the center symbolizing anxiety of the human condition. For such a serious subject matter and such dark subject matter, I wonder what he would think about the fact that it's also been widely used in comedy. Like, people do all kinds of memes and stuff with this piece, you know
Yep.
what I mean?
Macaulay Culkin made fun of him in Home Alone. No.
I wonder if he would be pleased or not.
Just do that face. Oh, I can't believe this.
Yeah. Um, do you know how to say this guy's name? Because I'm gonna embarrass myself.
Kandinsky.
Kadinsky. But the first name, is it Wassily? You Wassily Wabbit. Kandinsky, the first abstractionist. An influential Russian painter and art theorist, Kandinsky is credited with being the first artist to create a purely abstract work. It was a 1910 untitled watercolor, now in the Center Pompidou in Paris. He famously wrote, quote, "Color is the keyboard, the eyes are the harmonies, the soul is the piano with many strings, the artist is the hand that plays, touching one key to another to cause vibrations in the soul." Thanks. I hate it. I hate this. Yeah, completely hate it.
Two thumbs down.
2 thumbs down. Is this the beginning of the end when things started to go really wrong? What do
There's a
you what
bright spot. Surrealism. I think they're one of them gets down to Dolly. I enjoyed surrealism,
That's
but
true.
that one was a little bit more realistic in terms of the way things were painted. The subject matter wasn't, because it was exploring the subconscious, but I like that return to more closer to a realist or naturalist depiction of the human form.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't mind Dolly at all. I really have an appreciation for him, but I don't this is just to me, I look at this, it's like, what a bunch of garbage. Just I'm sorry. It's like I'm probably gonna offend some people who know a lot more about art than I do, but I don't. It's just whatever. If I saw this in someone's bathroom, I'd be like, "Ugh." I bet they paid a lot of money for that just to show people that they have taste when they don't.
But sometimes I can look at, a lot of modernist art, even though it's a type of abstraction I don't like. And I do like a lot of abstract art, but some abstract art I just don't like. But I can look at something like this and uh, it sounds weird, but I can almost appreciate it in a sense, because there wasn't really anybody or nobody that we really know of doing something quite like this. Even if I don't think it's very good, if I don't value it that much, I can at least appreciate it contextually.
Because it was novels.
Yeah, compared to everything going on at the time, and that somebody was taking things in a different direction, even if I don't quite like that direction, but still it shows that somebody was doing something that was different. And
Tree Surgeon likes it. Not everyone in our chat hates it, so art's in the eye of the beholder.
it looks kind of 90s. It seems like a lot of 90s graphic design kind of borrowed elements from this.
And you like the 90s. You
I
no
do.
wonder you like Kandinsky.
Oh no, I've been figured out.
um LOL, the painting is literally called Yellow, Red, and Blue. That's what somebody says. It's okay if you guys like this, of course. I could be totally off base here. It's not my cup of tea. I'm sorry if I was insulting. Um, again, I just don't really care for Picasso.
Yeah, I never really liked Guernica.
Pablo Picasso, the father of Cubism. Now, again, we should pull up some of his paintings before
Hmm.
so people could see if they haven't seen. Can you look up some while I read this? Just send me a link.
Sure.
So we'll show people. He actually knew he was very talented and skilled and skilled enough to, I believe, break the boundaries and create something new. And I have a respect for this. Absolutely, it's just not. It doesn't evoke the feel. I wouldn't want to see this every day. It doesn't evoke good feelings for me, I guess.
That's
Um,
the point, Keri. It's because it's about the Spanish Civil War, and
yes,
so yeah, it's supposed to like.
you definitely get a sense of the absolute chaos on the battlefield there. Um, but yeah, so I'll read this. Pablo Picasso, the father of Cubism, undoubtedly one of the most influential figures in modern art, with a career spanning 79 years. His large and varied body of work is often divided into periods: early work, the Blue Period, the Rose Period, the African Period, Cubism, Neoclassicism, Surrealism, and later work. Marcel Duchamp told an interviewer in 1933 that, quote, the modern artist must hate Picasso in order to make something new. Okay, let's pull up just so people can see it. Thank you for finding that. Some of his early stuff.
Yeah, it's quite.
It's so different.
I know. Okay. It's just weird that so many people don't know that I even paint it like this.
Can you guys see that? I mean, look at this. It's so different. And you can see how he's very talented, like very skillful before he started doing this cubism thing with the two eyes on one side.
And again, it's like it's weird because like when I look at stuff like that, when the more abstracted human forms, even though I don't like it aesthetically, I can again kind of appreciate the thought behind it, even though I don't like the result. Because
Yes.
this attempt to kind of capture um, multiple sides, I want to say 3D, but multiple sides of a form on a 2D plane. I think it's interesting idea. It's just the result
Yeah.
is jarring, kind of ugly.
Yeah.
But I just like kind of like that the thinking behind it at least.
Yeah. And it was absolutely new.
Hmm. The shock of the new. The remember when we did that 90s, our first episode of Pop Culture, we read that quote from Robert Hughes about censorship in 1990. He was an art
Oh,
critic,
yes.
and he had a documentary called The Shock of the New where he talked about modernism, and he was a proponent of that. And we'll talk about it a little bit when we start talking about controversy that the National Endowment for the Arts got into back in the 80s. But yeah.
Tree Surgeon says, who didn't know that? This is Art Class 101. I didn't know that. And I bet you there are a lot of people that don't know that. Do you ever watch Jay Leno's Man on the Streets videos? Just kidding. This is America.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't, because a lot of people, again, I don't think art is as valued as much, and what
Yeah.
art is valued is just more kind of newer art. And I'm not just talking about art gallery art, stuff online. A lot of people like images, digital imagery, and I think there's less attention paid to more classical artists, modernist, or traditional artists. And so I'm not surprised that a lot of Americans just don't know that. And there's not as many references to it in our pop culture either.
Right.
Not
Or
anymore.
like
I
what
mean,
Picasso painted before Cubism. It's like,
yeah.
I
'Cause you-
why would I, unless you're taking also with what kids are learning today, I expect them to come away learning. I went to a great college too, and I went to the top high school in my state, the science and math school. Notice what word is not there: art. But my point is, I went to a great school and I didn't know that. And the kids today, I I don't trust that they're getting as great of an education as I did, as you did, because most of their classes, even their art classes, their math classes, their science classes are full of CRT and queer theory and all this other crap. So they're learning even less than we did. Um, so anyway, if you don't know some of these things, that's okay. That's why we're walking through this with you. It's kind of interesting. Oh yeah, thanks, Nate D says I didn't know either. Thank you.
Now you know.
Now the more you know.
More you know. We need that cue. I wish we had a little
Yeah.
soundboard and played that every time we have a major discovery.
Nina has that.
Oh,
I
does
bet
she? Okay.
yeah, I would bet she wouldn't mind if we used it once in a while too. Could ask her. Um, okay, now we're getting into the ones that they call the precursor, the precursor to postmodernism and um, what did they call Duchamp? Avant-garde, like forward thinking, ahead of his time, and he's the Dada master. So this is this urinal. A lot of people are familiar with this one. Um, and here, let me read this and I'll tell you what I think about him. It says, best known for his ready-mades, mass-produced objects from typewriter covers to coat racks, which he signed and declared art. Duchamp was associated with Cubism, Dada, and conceptual art. His prototypical piece and most notorious work, a porcelain urinal named The Fountain, was voted the most influential artwork of the 20th century by a panel of 500 experts in 2004.
Downfall of Western art.
Downfall of Western art. But here's what I find interesting about him and this whole movement, and I think this is kind of funny. Tell me if you think I'm wrong or not. Weren't they kind of like trolls? Like, wasn't he sort of like the Milo Yiannopoulos of his period? Like didn't they start putting urinals in art galleries just to see if they could get away with it? Kind of
They're
like
mocking the
they were
art
mocking.
establishment and markets, yeah, art itself. And like I said, it wasn't just about this disdain for the bourgeois. It was just disdain for artistic standards, period, because they hated traditional art as well. Like if he was a traditional artist, and he does have some paintings, so kind of. Or more than that, but if he was like a traditional artist and wasn't getting traction, and decided, you know what, I'm going to submit a piece of garbage to some art competition to see how far, to kind of make a point of just how bad art has gotten and how bad it's getting, then maybe I can understand that. But him and the fellow Dadaists just kept making this type of art because they just had so much disdain for him. And I'm not sure about him, but I know a number of Dadaists were socialists, because that's something that
Mhm.
they don't put on the history books and art history books. But a lot of them, similar to the modernist architecture architects that we talked about, Le Corbusier and stuff, all had a hatred of elites and the rich, and basically anybody that they didn't like, they put in that category of being elites and rich, and they were trying to destroy the past and build some new future. And the future was just garbage, something that didn't speak to really anybody but themselves, which is something we've seen all throughout modern art, really.
Yeah. So, do you want to pause here and bring up one of the articles you have
Oh,
on
sure. Bring up
Dada?
what I want, because mainly wanted to show some of the other pieces. There's a brief description at the beginning of the article. It talks a little bit about Dada, but yeah, the pieces are just as ridiculous. And the irony is that they ended up creating the modern art where people can take literal junk and recontextualize it, and it suddenly becomes value.
It's so funny though, because again, I feel like it just started as like a joke. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're mocking the art establishment. It's almost like the art equivalent of, oh gosh, remember what James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose and Peter Boghossian did, where they wrote these
Yes, I
rid-
was thinking about that too.
yes, they wrote these ridiculous papers
Mm-hmm.
just to mock the academic world, and they submitted them to all of these peer-reviewed journals in academia, and they got accepted. Several of them were
Mm-hmm.
accepted, and it would be like if instead of them eventually coming out and saying we did this to prove a point, and the academia getting really angry at them and trying to smear them because of it, it would be like it would be as if academia heralded them and said it doesn't matter that you were trying to make a point, like we loved these pieces.
Yes.
Like, and like these started a whole movement, right? That's kind of what happened with this art form,
Yeah.
I think. They were trying to prove a point, and then it just took off, and it's like, "We don't care that you're mocking us, we love it."
That's exactly right.
This is what's in now. Okay, Dada, as for it, it smells of nothing. It is nothing, nothing, nothing.
Because it's very nihilistic. It's the problem with it. And that's problem with art and so much of our culture right now, where it's arguing against, there's no universal truths. No universal artistic standards. No such thing as beauty itself. That's what's so dark. It's funny for a little bit, but then when you start thinking about it, and particularly seeing the impact that it had on art, it just gets a little darker.
Darker. Should I read through some of this?
Yeah, a little bit. You don't have to read the whole thing, but yeah.
It was an artistic and literary movement, began in Switzerland. It arose as a reaction to World War One and the nationalism that many thought had led to the war. Influenced by other avant-garde movements, Cubism, Futurism, Constructivism, and Expressionism, its output was wildly diverse, ranging from performance art to poetry, photography, sculpture, painting, and collage. Dada's aesthetic, marked by its mockery of materialistic and nationalistic attitudes, proved a powerful influence on artists in many cities, including Berlin, Hanover, Paris, New York, and Cologne, all of which generated their own groups. The movement dissipated with the establishment of Surrealism, but the ideas it gave rise to have become the cornerstones of various categories of modern and contemporary art. Contemporary art, there it is. That's that's where we see a lot of the postmodern crap coming in today. Okay. And then they have a few of the key artists, and here are some of the pieces. Should I keep scrolling down or?
Yeah, keep scrolling down. Okay. Yeah, it kind of goes through a timeline.
Okay, so this one, who did this one? Oh, Duchamp, Marcel Duchamp. This was the Mona Lisa with a mustache and a little goatee. Okay.
So clever.
I don't know this guy. What's his name? Francis Picabia? Is that how you say that? A French artist who embraced the many ideas of Dadaism and defined some himself. He very much enjoyed going against convention and redefining himself to work in new ways a number of times over a career that spanned over 45 years. Let's see. It says, this is a portrait of the gallerist as a bellows camera, an automobile gear shift, a brake lever, and the word ideal above the camera in Gothic lettering. The fact that the camera is broken and the gear shift is in neutral has been thought to symbolize this guy he was criticizing as worn out. Okay. I don't even, again, you need all this text to tell me what this is. Like, would you put this on your wall, this thing on the left?
No. It looks like something that's packed in, like an instruction manual or something.
Exactly.
That comes with something you're trying to set up. You're like, oh, wait, that goes here. Okay.
With a broke like instructions in broken English because it's not the first language. Okay. This reminds me, this is performance art, right?
Oh, no. Yeah.
Well, one of the comedians I worked with,
Futuristic.
she used to do a lot of performance art. And actually some of it I found pretty funny, but she would dress as like a huge vagina. She would dress as different, like she just had all these different costumes, like crazy. It was hard to explain. But this reminds me of that kind of, you're in that performance art realm. Okay. Hugo Ball. Ball designed this costume for his performance of the sound poem Karawani, in which nonsensical syllables uttered in patterns created rhythm and emotion, but nothing resembling any known language. The resulting lack of sense was meant to reference the inability of European powers to solve their diplomatic problems through the use of rational discussion, thus leading to World War I. Yeah.
I would love it, like if there was like a World War II like movie or something where they're all fighting and he comes out in this costume in the middle of the battlefield and they all like lay down their guns and they start yodeling or something. It'd be magical. It's like, we only listened to him. Could have stopped World War One.
Oh, come on. This is what this means, guys. It's got this really profound meaning. Trust us. No. Okay. The fountain. There it is. This is all Dada. Okay. Have we seen enough of this?
Yeah.
Uh, I just again, it's just funny to me that this kind of started as a mockery and then it just became now it's in museums to this day,
Yeah.
this style, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's return. We're almost done with this list of some of the different types of modern artists, modern art. So, as I mentioned in that previous article, after Dada, it kind of gave way to Surrealism. So they've included here Salvador Dali, who everyone should be familiar with, the creative prankster, they call him. A pioneer of the Surrealist movement, Salvador Dali was an eccentric genius known for his wild art and pointy mustache. His paintings depicted a dream world in which commonplace objects are deformed, exaggerated, or juxtaposed in unexpected ways. Perhaps the most famous of those enigmatic images is the persistence of memory, in which limp melting watches rest in an eerily calm landscape. I like Dolly.
I like it. He's a weirdo. Like apparently he had a brother who died before he was born, and when Dolly was born, his parents told him that he was his reincarnated brother. So he went through his life thinking that.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Frida Kahlo. That they call her the mother of selfies, which is kind of funny.
It's interesting how many of the Mexican painters and muralists of that time were like socialist.
Yeah, and doing a lot of selfies.
Yes.
Uh,
See that unibrow, girl.
yeah, the unibrow. This one's this one is you can see tears there on her face. She did a lot of stuff, obviously, about emotion and relationships and, well, let's see what they say about her. Frida Kahlo is undoubtedly one of the most famous modern artists and perhaps the most renowned female painter, best known for her self-portraits. She had a rocky marriage with the artist Diego Rivera, and she explored that tempestuous relationship in her art. While Kahlo was moderately successful during her lifetime, she rose to superstar status in both the art world and popular culture after her death. This is her most valuable painting ever sold. It's called Diego and I, with a price tag of $34.9 million. And that's Diego painted there on her forehead. Uh, oh, also, this painting I read she did this painting when there were like public rumors going around. I mean, I guess at the time they were kind of they would be what would you compare them to? Like they were like Brangelina or something. I don't know. People were like talking about what's going on with them, right? There were these rumors going around that he was about to leave her for this Hollywood starlet, and so this painting was about that.
Wow.
Are you a fan?
No. I'm not. Never have been.
We have a couple of Frida Kahlo things in our house. I'm a fan. It's an
Okay.
interesting style. Um, Francis Bacon, 1909 to 1992, the artist of the macabre. Largely self-taught as an artist, Francis Bacon is renowned as one of the most important painters of the 20th century. He rejected the abstract art movement in favor of a distinctive and disturbing realism. He's best known for his harrowing, raw images, often interpreted as traumatic expressions of the post-war British psyche. Do you want me to put this on screen? Look at
Hold it up a little.
Oh, uh,
There you
this is one of my husband's pieces. Yeah. The queen of the selfie, guys. That's
go.
so funny. He must have been watching the show or, like, heard me. He's like, "I'm gonna bring one of them in there." Yeah, I actually like this one a lot. It's not as creepy as the other one with Diego painted on her forehead. Um, but yeah, that one hangs right now, that's in our temporary kitchen.
Staring at you, that unibrow.
Somebody says, "Agreed, her work is self-centered." Oh, Anthony says, "That's for Mystery Chris. That one's for you."
Thank you, Anthony.
We also have a piece of your art on display here. One day we'll have to
Oh,
show that. Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so I think we just have 2 more. So let's move on. This is Jackson Pollock, and this is during the abstract expressionist period, and this is a piece of his called Jack the Dripper. I mean, he's got a good use of puns. I like that. Um, a famous 20th century American artist, Jackson Pollock was the leading force behind the abstract expressionist movement in the art world and one of the pivotal artists in the transition between modern and contemporary art. Again, contemporary art being full of a lot of BS. And I think again, this was as part of the beginning of the end. I have no respect for this. It's not only do I not like it aesthetically, I don't care for it. It's just a bunch of paint splatter. But uh, beyond aesthetically, like there's nothing that tells me, unlike Picasso, who's developing something new with cubism and learning the rules, mastering the rules, having great technique and skill and talent, and then breaking the rules creatively. There's nothing that leads me to believe that that's the case for Jackson Pollock. Like, does he have any talent, or did he just go in and just start doing this?
Well, the abstract expressionists, Pollock and Rothko, are valued because of the process that they supposedly went in. It was like this tapping into this um, subconsciousness, supposedly. I mean, I think it's all BS, but they're supposed to be tapping into a certain way of doing things, and that's why people tend to value for it more for that process than the actual aesthetics of it. And unfortunately, this was kind of the end, where we saw like the full-on abstraction, the complete abandonment of representational subject matter, and it's ultimately a abstract piece that is about nothing. And again, I'm not saying that as a hater of all abstract pieces. I don't like that one, but I do like a lot of abstract pieces. But I don't put it on the same level as traditional art that tended to represent something, and that was more about beauty and universal human truths, experiences. And this is just more about what the artist supposedly was going through while painting this painting.
I mean, okay, what's he going through? Like, this looks like a caffeine withdrawal headache. That's like, just call it that. Like, I went through a caffeine
Scatterbrain.
withdrawal this morning.
Or too much coffee.
Too much coffee, yeah.
Guess that painting.
Okay, and then see, this is what's so interesting about modern art. What when people say modern art, again, if you look it up, they're talking about in the art world, they're talking about the 1860s to roughly the 1960s or 1970s. That's a long time period. That's why they have all these, they've broken it down into all these different isms, like, you know, cubism and surrealism and Dadaism. And then, and so you've got in this whole huge category of what's called modern art, you've got everything from Monet to here, Andy Warhol. It's kind of crazy. Andy Warhol, the Pope of Pop, a precursor of the pop art movement of the 1960s, Andy Warhol earned a lasting reputation as a cultural icon. According to the art movement, he invented elements and symbols of popular culture and mass consumption could be on par with fine arts, as evidenced in Warhol's Marilyn, which became the emblem of pop art. He's famous for his bright, colorful paintings and prints of subjects ranging from celebrities to everyday products, such as soup cans.
Pop art's kind of like a cousin of Dada in a way,
Yeah.
because pop art was reacting against abstract expressionism, and on one level, I can say, okay, I like that, but it wasn't a call for return to more, traditional art. It was more of a desire to blend low art and high art, and so they took a lot of commercial imagery, changed colors, did repeating patterns like Marilyn Monroe here, and then recontextualized that within the space of art gallery. And a lot of this stuff was basically essentially plagiarized. You're just because he based this on a photograph of Marilyn Monroe, and so you're just basically taking other people's work. It's almost like a hip hop. Maybe that's why I kind of like when we did the hip hop episode. I told you that I even though I like a lot of '90s hip hop, I don't put it on the same level as classic black music like Sam Cooke and Al Green, Marvin Gaye, Aretha Franklin. And
Right.
I made the comparison between art, like, traditional art, which I tend to view as more high art, and abstract art or even pop art or installation art and other stuff I tend to view as lower art. Some of it I like, some of it I don't, but I don't put it doesn't involve the same skill and doesn't represent the same things as what traditional art does. And so not a huge fan of pop art, but
I could see I could see some of its influence in what you do though.
yeah.
Like again, you do some things that remind me of pop art, like you're into the 90s as we mentioned. You did your avatar. People in the chat were asking. You did your background of your
Mhm.
avatar. Um somebody says, "Oh, I wanted to put this up because there was somebody who actually really liked Jackson Pollock in our chat, which is fine. I wanted to show a difference of opinion." Mark Lloyd says Pollock is brilliant. Sit and look at one of his works and think, where did he start? Look for the rhythm and pattern. There's structure in the chaos. It's for meditation. And then he says Warhol though is awful. I
I
love
am.
I love people.
But
Thank you,
see,
Mark. I like
I can
hearing that difference of opinion.
yeah, I can look at a lot of abstract art and appreciate the basic art elements in it: movement, rhythm, texture, color. It can it's formalism basically. We're just judging it by the forms on the canvas and just judging it by that without any context. And I can appreciate some of it, but again, that lack of representation of some human experience doesn't elevate the art for me to a level that I think art should be. And not that I'm not saying that abstract art shouldn't be art, it's just a lower form in my opinion.
I like Warhol a lot better than I like
Pollock.
Pollock. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Even though it's like you say, it's like hip hop, like borrowing things. It's
Sampling,
kind
yeah,
of
sampling music.
it's like it's ironic. Um, but I dig it. This is a funny story. As an aside, my husband's in the chat. He says there's a scene. He's told me this story before. There's a scene in Elton John's autobiography where he and John Lennon are in a hotel room snorting lines. They hear a knock at the door, and it's Andy Warhol. Lennon says to hide because Warhol always has that bloody camera. and they, and they sit silently and pretend like they're not there until Warhol leaves.
I want to see a
It's
movie of
funny.
that so bad.
Yeah. They're like, oh gosh, this is Andy Warhol. How funny. Okay.
Something I didn't know about Warhol I learned recently. He was a devout Catholic, but he hid it. It didn't come
I
out till
didn't
after he
know
died.
that.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat mentioned that. They said he was influenced by Catholic art. Oh, here it is.
Hmm.
Free Thinker. Thank you. Free Thinker says, fun fact is that Warhol was heavily influenced by the art in the Orthodox Church that his mom attended. I had never heard that before.
And that's kind of a portion of like postmodern art, kind of like postmodern architecture, how they kind of borrow from certain things from the past, but they tend to do it in a way that's not unified and it's a little bit out of context as well. And that's why a lot of it just seems kind of, even though it can be playful and enjoyable, like a lot of the architecture, a lot of it's just done without any consideration about, what's around it, the context that's around that piece or that piece of
Mhm.
architecture.
Mhm. So, what would you like for me to pull up next? Should we talk about Piss Christ, or do you want to talk about the CIA?
Only briefly about CIA. We don't even have to read anything, but the reason why I brought the CIA thing because a lot of people have you're starting to know this, but I think it came out in the '90s, but really in the last few years it's getting more traction about how CIA funded in part the abstract expressionist. One of the articles that I pulled out came out in I think it was the Independent UK magazine back in the '90s, talked about how originally the State Department was funding some abstract artists because they wanted to um, combat the socialist realism in Soviet Union and show that America was the land of the free, where you're free to express yourself and experiment and do all these wild and crazy things, whereas in Soviet Russia you had to make political propaganda. And so when the State Department had they funded a showing of some abstract art, the public hated it and voted. Harry Truman hated it. And so then the government got smart and they're like, hey, let's just have the CIA do it so they can do it covertly. And so the CIA funded museums, various organizations, which then funded the abstract expressionists. And so I'm sure most, if maybe all of the abstract artists didn't know that it was the CIA specifically that was in part funding them. But uh, that's what they say about fighting the Cold War through the culture, which I think there's some truth in there. But me, I can be a bit conspiratorial, so I almost wonder, like, does psyop go both ways? Like, is it a psyop on the American public to promote ugly art,
To
trash
promote.
art? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I don't know, I could see it being both. Like, you're right. It's sort of, give them this meaningless stuff. But again, there's people in our chat who really like Jackson Pollock, so
That's cool. Yeah, that's fine.
uh wait, you said we don't have to read through these, but I did want to
No.
say that was an article from the Independent about the CIA using artists like Pollock as a CIA weapon is what they call it. And here's another article. Let's see. I'll put this one on the screen. How MoMA and the CIA conspired to use unwitting artists to promote American propaganda during the Cold War.
Yeah, this article even talks about the Rockefeller family and their involvement in supporting some of the exhibitions featuring um, abstract expressionism.
There he is, Nelson A. Rockefeller, president of the Museum of Modern Art, at a meeting of the Board of Trustees in 1939, examining one of the paintings to be hung in the museum's new building. This is so interesting. The fact that they were like, who out of all the things the CIA is like doing that you could imagine, the fact that they're funding art exhibits with Jackson Pollock's art, and then it's just sort of like, why?
Yeah, don't they have some countries to go overthrow? Why are we?
Right. That's so interesting. Okay, we're not going to read through this one, but I'll drop the link to this one in the chat. So if anybody wants to go and read more about the CIA and abstract expressionism, there you go. Bungalow Logic says, I've been listening to the show while driving. Just wanted to drop and say hi to my familiars in the chat. Well, hello. Welcome. Okay, we're going to bring up something that I think, because it caused a lot of stir at the time, I think most people are familiar with at least the name of this. Piss Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so in terms of other government funding, the National Endowment of the Arts gives grants to artists, although now I think they give grants to organizations that give the grants to the individuals. I don't think they can give grants to regular individuals anymore, and it's partly due to the controversy over this piece, National Endowment Arts, which was created in 1965 by LBJ, part of the Great Society. It was relatively controversy free for the most part in the 70s, up until the 80s when Ronald Reagan said he was going to cut the budget of it, and that created an uproar, and there's Republicans and Democrats that didn't support that, so nothing happened. And then in the late 80s, it came out that Piss Christ by Andres Serrano was in part funded by the National Endowment of the Arts, and this is what caused a big controversy. So if you scroll down a little bit to the part where it goes a little down, further down, keep on going. There's the artist. Keep on going. Down further, please. Almost there. The artwork there. You start reading there.
Sorry, I had myself muted for a second. The artwork. The Cyberchrome print photograph Immersion, or Piss Christ, by Andres Serrano depicts a small plastic crucifix statue submerged in a bright red-yellow liquid, which, due to the title of the work and testimony of the artist, we know to be Serrano's own urine. The photograph, created in 1987, was part of a larger series exploring immersions in classic iconography. 2 years prior, Serrano had created Blood Cross, a photograph of a plexiglass cross filled with cow's blood and slightly leaking to look as if the figure itself is bleeding. Immersion, Piss Christ, is deeply saturated, glossy, and at first glance, it is impossible to discern that the central medium of the work's creation could be a bodily fluid. Serrano himself has proclaimed that the work is not intended to be an overt political statement on religion, but rather that he prefers the work remains ambiguous. How does that make you feel? Despite this desire for ambiguity, Serrano has also alluded to being interested in the over commercialization and cheapening of Christian iconography in contemporary culture. As a lifelong Christian himself,
Mm.
he mm, mm, he denounces the idea that he intended to create a blasphemous piece, but rather that it was a personal and serious work of art.
I like how he's supposedly trying to bring attention to the cheapening of religious iconography related to Christianity and Christ by putting it in your and disrespecting it and
By yeah,
yeah, I mean that'd be like if I said I wanted to bring attention to sexual assault, so I went out and sexually assaulted some people.
yes,
It's like
that's exactly. I just, I don't, I don't, I don't see any value in this whatsoever.
yeah.
So, is there more here that I
Yeah,
should
yeah,
read?
just to
Oh
read
yeah.
a little bit on that paragraph there. They talk about the reception of it. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Initial reception. When Serrano's Immersion Piss Christ debuted in 1987 at the Stux Gallery in New York City, it was favorably received in New York City. The piece went on to be exhibited at the Southeastern Center for the Contemporary Art in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where it won the institution's awards in the visual arts competition sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts. As the National Endowment for the Arts, NEA is an American government agency that offers financial funding for artistic projects. Serrano ended up receiving backlash in 1989 from United States Senators Al D'Amato and Jesse Helms for receiving money from the taxpayer-funded government organization. Yeah, it turns out some people might have a problem with their money that they earned going to pay for a crucifix it's immersed in a jar of the artist's pee. I don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
And it's not even that it's the crucifix and that I happen to be a Christian. It would also be if he immersed a banana in a thing of his urine. I don't want to pay for that. It's not
Hmm.
worth it. Like that's not where my tax dollars should be going.
And it highlights one of the other problems with modern art, where so much of the art is based on shocking people by dealing with taboo subjects and really assaulting more societal norms of what is acceptable behavior just for the sake of assaulting that, tearing down these boundaries for no reason other than the artist
Just
wants
to
to
do
create
it.
controversy, and so people talk about them because that appears to be the final frontier, because postmodernists just deconstructed everything, and so it's like, where does art go? I mean, the only thing left is for people to try to shock people by using poop and pee and semen and all these other things, incorporating into art, knowing that it's going to disgust a
Kids
lot of people, but that's
using
what they
kids.
want, because that's that people who have no talent and feel this is the best way that they can you know create a brand and raise their profile as an artist. It's easy to do.
Yeah. No talent, just destruction. That's the way I view this.
Hmm.
So, They said, so he ended up receiving this backlash because it was taxpayer funded money. The senators ended up successfully passing a law that required the NEA to consider, quote, general standards of decency, end quote, in subsequent grant awards. Other protesters asserted that the NEA award violated the separation of church and state, and a large scale debate on provocative artworks was born. The attention resulted in a barrage of hate mail, death threats, and a loss of grants for Serrano, while the NEA budget was slashed by 2/5. In retrospect, the debates surrounding Immersion, Piss Christ, and fellow NEA award winner Robert Mapplethorpe's work could be considered the front lines of the culture wars of the 1980s and 1990s. By the way, this is an article in Artland magazine, if you guys want to read the whole thing.
But yeah, it just goes on to talk about future controversies and how, every once in a while some people will attack the piece, and like you see there, some people throwing something at the breaking the glass over it. Still gets a
Oh, you know what's so funny? Someone broke the glass. I thought that was just part of this crap art.
it is now.
How would you know? How would you know?
Yes.
Like someone could spray paint it and I'd be like, is
Yeah.
that part of it? Like,
Yeah.
how would you
You
know?
don't.
Oh,
You
someone
don't know.
smeared poop on it. Isn't that part of it? I don't
You would never know.
never know. Okay. Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
how do
I
you
know.
decide how do you decide what's art? This is the unanswerable question,
Well,
right?
that's an easy question to
What?
define. That's I go back and forth in trying to define art, and I can't really get to an objective answer for art. I can only give what I think is art, and similar to what I said earlier, I think art at its best is art that explores, um, you know, human experience, human nature, um, the things that are universally understood by us all. And so when you have a piece of art, representational piece of art that represents that, it's something that I think people should be able to get,
Mhm.
on a level like a movie. It's almost like a lot of movies where you can understand a lot of themes about movies without them having to spell it out, simply because of how well that movie is, filmed, edited, acted, all that.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of art should be able to communicate things that, most people would be able to pick up on. And that's not saying that there can't be more symbolism and other things that a person who has more of a trained eye for art analysis pick up on, someone who's more into philosophy or something, that they could enjoy on that level. But I do think there has to be some kind of universal aspect to it, that really causes that art to become more than what it is, which is just, pigment on a canvas.
Yeah. I have trouble defining it. That's why I'm asking. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about it a lot lately. What is beauty? What is art? These questions. And um, I heard a great analogy, and it was in, I forget which video it was in. I watched a lot of videos about modern art while driving to and from in the past couple of days. But one of them was it's saying that, in defense of having standards, aesthetic standards and standards of, technique and skill and talent. And that for some reason we tend to, in this postmodern world and culture, we're told, if somebody says it's art, it's art. If it identifies as art, it's art. Like it's art. It's all art. And that's, as you pointed out, if everything is art, then nothing's art. That there need to be these boundaries and standards that are somehow measurable. And so the analogy they gave was figure skating. They said, if you watch the Olympics, for example, you have figure skaters out there who are the most talented, the most skilled, the most artful, graceful, and who are performing on ice these beautiful artistic pieces for us. And then you have judges who are there to judge their skill and talent and the beauty of their performance piece. And they said, if someone went out there who didn't bother to put in the time or work, had no talent, had no skill, didn't have a technique and went out there and put on ice skates and just started flopping around on the floor and telling you like, this is my piece, it's art, you know, like this is my figure skating piece, like you would definitely be like, no, like that doesn't count, no. And so I really like that analogy because it helped me think about art a little differently, which I agree it's harder to do, I think, with something visual that you're looking at than a performance piece. But there's it's almost like that famous saying about, you know, what's porn? I can't define it, but you know it when you see it.
Yeah.
I kind of feel that way, like, but because it's objective, we all have different tastes, or you know, I look at something like Picasso is in this group of modern artists, and it may not be my taste, but it's art. I respect
Hmm.
it. I
Right.
absolutely respected his talent and skill um and artistry, like what he was trying to do, like something different. Um and so just because you don't like something and it's not to your aesthetic, uh you know, what you would choose to put in your house. Just because it's not that doesn't mean that you think it's not art. I don't know. I'm kind of stumbling around here, but do you see what I'm
No,
saying?
no. Yeah, I do.
Like,
And like you said, it's hard. And so best, we can do is really just kind of explain our preference of, what we think art is, because
well,
it's
there's
it's
our go ahead.
oh no. Go ahead.
Well, there's our preference of what we like, but then I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that I look at and I'm like, yeah, that's art, that's art, that's art. All day long, that's art. I just don't
Mhm.
happen to like it. But all day long, that's art. It's not my cup of tea, but I get that's art. And then there's this other category that it's not merely that I don't like it, and it's not merely that it's not my cup of tea. I look at it and say that it's not even art.
Yes.
Like, it's not that it's not my preference. It's like it's not even art.
Right,
It
right.
doesn't not be called that.
Well,
So
it's
what
like
is that?
debates on like beauty too, because you think about, is beauty objective? And certainly you could look at, the human form, how, people are kind of programmed to respond to, certain markers of, youth and fertility and strength that, you could classify that as objective. You could look at, a sunrise. How many people are think the sunrise is hideous? I mean, would you not say that's objective? I'm sure you can find somebody who thinks, sunrise is awful, but that person be
Uh,
someone who's not in the right mind.
white male oppression?
Yeah.
The oppression of the white man, that's the sunshine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we gonna play a game?
Yeah, but real quick, can you bring up that Instagram? I just want to show this to people. That Instagram account I said this is for people who are interested in traditional art. A mutual friend of ours sent me this. This is
Yeah.
called the Art Renewal Center, and it's an organization that's mission is to promote more traditional forms of art, more realism. And on their website, they have competitions where they give out money for it. They have links to schools that have a concentration in traditional art, because a lot of art schools are more concentrated on modern and postmodern art. They have museums. There's some here in Texas. I was looking at the ones in Texas. There are a couple in Fredericksburg. There,
Wow.
some of these are the old masters. Not all of these are new arts, but they're done in the style of traditional art. And so, for people who enjoy traditional art, I think it's good to check out, and especially if you have someone in your family, some kids or niece nephew that are interested in traditional art and maybe looking for college or something that's more concentrated on that, might be something that's worth some time looking into.
I love this. I love it so much. So this is called the Art Renewal Center, and the
Hmm.
website is artrenewal.org. How cool.
Yeah.
I know which friend sent this to you. This is my friend who I've had 2 friends who are very talented, who went to art school and didn't fit in because they
Hmm.
actually had talent, or they worked in oil paints, or they were into more traditional art, and they were being told to, you know, do the kind of postmodern stuff where it just, and the students who were being praised had no talent and were taking the stuffing out of teddy bears and putting it on a table and, that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's really cool that there's a movement for art renewal, because there were people in the chat I saw saying also, yeah, like, I'm ready to get back to traditional
Yeah.
art. Did you want to show The Simpsons, or are we going to save that for the end?
Save it for the end. Let's play the 2 games. So pull up the George Bush one. So I prepared a series of slides, and I'm going to have Keri try to guess which painting was done by our former president, George W. Bush.
Okay, let's see. We did this recently. I'm trying to remember how to put the whole thing on the screen.
Oh,
Give me 1 second.
okay.
Boom. No.
But yeah, we're going to do that. And then after we do that, I did the same thing, but with Hunter Biden. And we're going to have Keri try to guess which piece of art the artist was smoking crack when they
Okay, here we go. So now what am I guessing in this game?
Okay, you're going to go through these slides and try to guess which one is by George W. Bush.
Only one of them is by George W. Bush?
Correct.
And how many are there?
5.
Okay. I don't think it's this one.
Because he doesn't care about black people?
Kanye said George W. Bush. He doesn't care about black people. Unless he painted this up, unless this is Kanye and George W. Bush painted it as beautiful. An apology.
Yeah, an act of forgiveness. That'd be great.
Okay. Oh, this might be him. I don't know, though. This is a little too good. Like, does he get help with his art, or do we know? Is it all entirely him? I think
his parents used to help him hold.
I think this one requires too much skill. I don't think this is
him.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, this might be him. Is that Tony Danza?
Does it look like Tony Danza? What? That's more like John Hamm.
This doesn't look too skinny face to be John Hamm.
It looks like him. He's got to live a longer face.
Okay, maybe. That might be him. Okay, let me see what my other options are. No, that's not him. That's not. No. I don't think so.
Okay.
And no, that's not him. Too much skill. Okay.
So what are you thinking?
Let me see. I think it might be. Let me go back to. Can you see that? Is it back on screen?
Not yet. Any moment.
Okay, I'm going to say it's actually this one of the black person.
Say your final answer.
That out of all of these, which one is the George W. Bush painting? It's either this one or the one of Tony Danza. It's got to be this one. It's the black person.
You are wrong, Keri.
Wow.
It was Tony Danza.
It was. That was my second choice.
I should have gone. You got
this one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's my second choice.
I don't know who that is. I'm wondering if that's a family member. He looks a little George H.W. Bush-ish.
Or John Kerry. Is that John Kerry?
That could be John Kerry. But he's a Democrat, maybe. Not that matters.
Yeah, I wonder who this is. Maybe it's a family member. I mean, it looks a lot like it could be Tony Danza to me. It could be John Kerry. I don't see John Hamm like you do. But that's, this isn't that bad for, I'm a little surprised at W. Like, this isn't.
Not. Oh, good.
I mean, I think you can tell with this one and the first one, the one I picked incorrectly. I think you can tell with, out of the whole bunch, these two are the two with a little less talent. But It's not bad. It's a lot more talent than I have.
This guy baited Iraq.
Let's see if people in the chat got it right. Well, let me see what the chat was saying. They're saying it looks like, yeah, somebody says it looks like John Kerry. I'm not the only one.
Someone said it looked like a Beto.
Is this number 3 or the 4th
Yeah,
one?
it's number 3.
Number 3. Okay, Rib Rascal got it right. Yeah, Ryan Harger got it right, the Tony Danza one. Hold me closer to Tony Danza. Sorry. Ryan says W's actually done some better ones than this. Better painter than me, at least. Wow.
He still paints. He did some recent ones that were topical. I think one of them I saw is a picture of like a nurse, a COVID nurse or something. It's like, okay.
Okay. Wow, I'm a little impressed. Go W.
Okay.
Who knew?
All right. Now let's turn our attention to
and I hate him, by the way.
foot fetish. What?
I do not like W.
No,
I know people who watch my show random, like there are leftists who stumble on this program and they think they're like, oh, it's a right winger show, and so of course she would like his art. No, I really abhor him.
My favorite George Bush moment was when he was getting off a plane and saw Stevie Wonder, decided to wave to him.
Did that really happen?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Although, if you believe the conspiracies that Stevie Wonder isn't blind, maybe he knew.
Maybe he knew. You're so silly. Okay, now what is this game?
The Hunter Biden. So it's the same concept. 5 pictures. Got to guess which one is by Hunter Biden.
Okay. This, by the way, this looks like somebody did this on the computer. I don't know how much talent this takes. You would know more than I do. Does this person have talent? You're not going to say
talent.
Enhance. Is there a person writing this molecule here on the bottom right?
Oh, no, it looks like there's COVID, like something.
There's a black person writing that molecule. It's enhance. Okay. I don't like it, but I don't know. I haven't liked either of these so far. Okay, let's see what else there is. This is like a caterpillar. See this caterpillar? He's wearing a sailor hat over here on the
left. Represents Joe Biden.
No. Just no. I don't. Oh gosh. Is this Hunter Biden? Wait, hold on. I gotta see my other options. I think this might be Hunter Biden. These circles. This is the best one out of all of them. And it's not that great, but this is the best one. I like this one. What is this? Watercolor?
Uh-huh.
I don't mind this one.
So what's it going to be?
I think it might be here. I wonder if the people in the chat know which one it is. I'm not going to look over there just in case. Okay, which one is Hunter Biden done? We should have had game show music. This looks like, to me, maybe I'm wrong. You know a lot more about digital art than I do, and you've done some digital art, so I could be talking out my bum. But this one to me just looks like somebody went on one of those AI machines and doesn't really have any talent. So this could be Hunter Biden. It's like really lazy kind of art. This one, blah. I don't think that's him though. This looks like my carpet. Don't think and I think he's these circles. Is it this one?
Is your final answer?
It's my final answer.
No, Keri. It wasn't. It's number 1.
It's number 1.
Yeah.
The lazy one? That was my
Yeah.
second answer.
You should have gone with second answer for both.
I should have gone with a second answer for both. Ah, because that's the one I said, "That one's really lazy." I could see him doing this. I think this is now well, so now that I've lost the game, I'm not playing anymore. Tell me what you think about this is the Hunter Biden one. This is what I say as the common man who knows very little about digital art. I look at this and I say, this person doesn't have any talent. They used something on their computer to make this. They're very lazy and they're saying, look at my art. Am I right? You know more about this than I do.
Well, someone in the chat said it looked like a salt painting, and it does kind of look like that. Like when you have watercolor, you put salt on it, it kind of separates. It kind of looks like maybe that's it. But when I looked up Hunter Biden stuff, this had more stuff in it than I thought it would, because I thought it was going to be literally like a squiggly line. And so he has other arts that are similar to this. And so while I don't think it's good, it's better than I thought for something that was clearly the intent for money laundering, which was another aspect we didn't get to tonight. But that a big part of the art world is based on money laundering. A lot of elites use that to launder money. A lot of them use it to store wealth. There are certain like little shelters, offshore shelters, where the art could be stored and they don't have to pay taxes on it. And it's just all sorts of schemes where they overbid on these arts and pay like, millions, $100 million or something on something that's just a kid could make.
Yeah, well, that's what this is. Hey, I do want to say in the chat, Drifting67 says you can actually do some great artwork on the computer.
Yeah.
Oh, I completely agree. Mystery Chris has done a lot of great artwork on the computer. I'm just not as I don't know as much about it as he does, and it's hard for me to judge whether someone who's doing art on the computer has talent. Like it's not as easy for me to look at it and say what they used to do this. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
I respect your opinion on this more than mine.
Yeah, there's a lot of good great digital art, concept art, even like some AI art, which we're going to do a future episode about AI art, because I'm just fascinated with that. Like it's fascinating, creepy at the same damn time. But yeah, it's getting oppressive, the amount of things people can do digitally.
Yeah.
It's just the question though is, do you consider digitally art art?
I mean, I make these thumbnails in Canva. Am I an artist? No.
A graphic designer, you can say that.
I did some art, Mom. Oh man. Freethinker says the buyers of Hunter's paintings are all probably hanging out at the WF right now.
No kidding.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. You guys, this has been fun. We're going to end on a fun note.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've got a funny little clip for the end.
It's real short.
Thank you guys for hanging out with us on our Wednesday night show. If it's your first time here, we do this every Wednesday. We have different topics. You'll find we're not often topical in terms of what's in the news. If we were, we would have covered Velma tonight.
Oh yeah.
Looks like
I covered that a little bit out with Nina. So
yeah, it did with Nina. It looks like a bunch of crap. Okay, let's see. Here we go. We're going to end with this funny little clip. Here we go.
Forget it, Marge. There is no way I'm spending my Saturdays at a museum. Unless museums don't have foosball, do they? You lose, Michelangelo's David. Who's next?
I always love that.
That's what I was saying earlier. Do you think he would, if he were alive today, would he be happy that his piece, The Scream, has become so popular that it's used in comedy, or would he be very upset and moody and melancholy because it was meant to be serious and melancholy?
Depends on how much he loves money. I don't know. I can change attitudes real quick.
Thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you, Mr. Chris. It was fun talking to you.
You as well.
A couple of announcements. Oh, Cheeky Mayor, drop the link in here because I want to make sure we plug this. Cheeky Mayor wanted to invite everyone to her church. If you are in the Irvington, Indiana area, it's the Irvington United Methodist Church, and she just dropped the link to their YouTube channel here in the chat. If you're interested, it's Shining the Light with IUMC 3316. That's them. And so you guys can check that out there. And then my other announcement is tomorrow is Dolly Parton's birthday, and I just want to make sure to remind everyone, and so that you decide what you're doing to celebrate. And and then, I think that's it. Oh no, tomorrow I'm uploading it tonight. I'm just finishing some of the editing. Tomorrow, the deprogrammed interview that's coming out is with the famous artist Bertie Rose. Speaking of art, very topical this week.
Nice.
I cannot wait for you guys to see this one. She was so delightful, and there were so many people in the deprogrammed audience who recommended that we speak. I'm so glad you did. It was a long time coming, but I can't wait for that interview to come out. So that'll be tomorrow at 6:00 Central. And I hope you guys have a good night. Kevin says, are we done? Yeah, I think we're going to wrap it up. We had fun. We just kind of did an overview of modern art, and, what was it? Somebody said art class 101. What is modern art? And, if you look at it in the big picture of things, what I learned is that there's actually a lot of modern artists I enjoy, that I like, because it spans such a big period of time. I mean, who knew that it has everyone from Monet to Dali to Andy Warhol in there, along with Marcel Duchamp and Jackson Pollock, and just, this whole broad range of people. But I definitely understand towards the end of it how it led into what we're seeing now with like the MLK statue and all this postmodern nonsense. So, okay. Oh, Kevin says this is the highlight of my week. Well, awesome.
Yay.
I'm glad you enjoy hanging out. We enjoy it. You guys, do you have anything to announce, Mystery Chris?
No. I did want to see somebody in chat mentioned Georgia O'Keeffe. It's good, which I never understood Georgia O'Keeffe because she painted these flowers that were clearly vaginas. And I'd always get very upset because I'm like, this woman gets labeled one of the greatest artists of all time for painting vaginas. But when I paint vaginas, I get labeled pervert. That's not right, Keri.
You do not. Is that like do you really? You don't.
No. I think you're thinking about it, like, wait, no, like, I'm really, no. Like,
I just couldn't see you doing that.
Penis is on the, no.
No. One day, somebody in the chat said they wanted to see your art. One day we should consider
maybe one
putting
day
it up.
I'll show it.
I would love for you to show it. So we'll think about it. We'll think about it, chat. Okay, thank you guys. That was fun. Thanks for hanging out. Oh, wait. Did I get the super chat? Oh, yeah, I did. Okay, good. Okay, good. We'll talk to you guys later. Have fun.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you to today's sponsor, the Church on the Square of Georgetown, Texas, which happens to be my church. My church is no longer allowed to advertise on Facebook, which is unfortunate because that's how I and a lot of other church members originally found them. They've been told that they violate community standards. There's no details there of what that means, but you guys know the score. Anyway, since they're not allowed to advertise, I'm here to give them a plug. You can find them online at thechurchonthesquare.org. You can also find videos of all the sermons and some other kinds of content on their YouTube page at Church on the Square. You can also join us. If you happen to be in the Georgetown, Texas area, we meet every Sunday at Ken's Guitars, that's Kenz, Ken's Guitars, right on the Georgetown Square. We meet outside, right on the square. Sometimes, if the weather's nice, you might find us there. You might find us outside in front of Ken's. But if you're local, I hope to see you.